Good day, viewers. Welcome to today's class. And today we'll be looking at likely GCE physics questions. Let's dive right into it. Question number 1 says, the lower and upper fixed point of a mercury in glass thermometer are marked X, and 180 millimeter. So here I have the lower fixed point. Let's say this is M naught. This is mercury, so that's why I'm using M. So M naught is X, and M100, that's the upper fixed point, is marked 180 millimeters, respectively. On a particular day, the mercury meniscus in the thermometer rises to 60 millimeters. So M theta on that particular day was 60 millimeters. If the corresponding reading on Celsius scale is, so my C theta for this M theta was given as 20 degrees Celsius. What is the value of X? Now we know that at M naught here, which is the lower fixed point, my C naught is 0 degrees Celsius. At M100, which is the upper fixed point of this mercury in glass thermometer, my C100 is 100 degrees Celsius. So in order for us to be able to find out the value of X, it means we have to do a comparison of the fundamental interval and the conversion from your mercury in glass thermometer down to your Celsius scale reading of this temperature. So let's do that. So this means that I'll be having C theta minus C naught over C100 minus C naught to be equal to M theta minus M naught over M100 minus M naught. So this means that I'll be having 20 minus 0 over 100 minus 0 to be equals to 60 minus X over 180 minus X. So this will give me 20 over 100 to be equal to 60 minus X over 180 minus X. So this is the same thing as saying I have 2 over 10 to be equals to 60 minus X over 180 minus X. So if I cross multiply here, I'll be having 2 open bracket 180 minus X is equal to 10 open bracket 60 minus X. So if I open the bracket, I'll have 360 minus 2X is equals to 600 minus 10X. If I collect like terms, I'll be having minus 2X plus 10X is equals to 600 minus 360. So this will give me 8X is equal to 240. So I'll divide both sides by 8 divided by 8. So I'll have 240 divided by 8, and that will give me 30. So it means my X is going to be what? 30 degrees. It means that the corresponding value of X, so we're talking about the measurement in the mercury in glass thermometer, so this would be 30 millimeters. So it means that the lower fixed point of this mercury in glass thermometer is going to be 30 millimeters, which is option C. So that takes us to question number 2, which says, when water is heated between 0 degrees and 4 degrees Celsius, its density dash. So when water is heated between 0 degrees and 4 degrees Celsius, you discover that the water contracts. So water has what we call anomalous behavior. It behaves irregularly. It does not expand when heated from 0 to 4 degrees Celsius, unlike other liquids. Instead, it contracts. So within that time, at 4 degrees Celsius, it has the highest amount of density. It is more dense when it contracts. So it has the highest amount of contraction at 4 degrees Celsius, which means it is denser at 4 degrees Celsius. So between 0 and 4 degrees Celsius, the density of water normally increases. So the correct answer to this question says, when water is heated between 0 degrees Celsius and 4 degrees Celsius, a density dash. So what happens to a density? A density increases. So option A says it increases for a while and then decreases. Option B says it decreases for a while and then increases. Option C says it decreases. Option D says it increases. And option E says it remains constant. So the correct answer is that the density increases between 0 and 4 degrees Celsius, which is option D. So that takes us to question number 3. which says if NEPA charges 65 kobo per kilowatt hour. So we have here that NEPA charges 65 kobo per kilowatt hour. So the cost of electricity, the cost per kilowatt hour is 65 kobo. And then he said, for electricity supply to customers, what will an electric iron rated 750 watts? So the electric iron has a power of 750 watts. And it was used for a time of 24 hours. So my 750 watts, if I convert it to kilowatt, this will give me 0.75 kilowatts. So if I convert it to kilowatt hour, it's the same as saying power times time. So that will give me 0.75 times 24. So that will give me 18 kilowatt hour. So 18 kilowatt hour is the total amount of energy that was used up by this particular electric iron. And if the cost per kilowatt hour is 65 kobo, it means that the total cost, this cost is going to be 18 times 65. And that will give me 1170 kobo. So if I convert this to naira, divide by 100, so that will give me 11 naira 70 kobo. So at the end of the day, this person is supposed to pay 11 naira 70 kobo, which is what? Option B. So that takes us to question number 4. It says, an object is placed 15 centimeters in front of a concave mirror of focal length 20 centimeters. The image formed is dash. So when an object is placed in front of a concave mirror and you discover that the focal length of this particular concave mirror is higher than the distance between the mirror and the object, then you know that this particular object or the image that will be formed is going to be what? First, the image is within the focal length. So the image is going to be erect and is going to be magnified. And then, because we're talking about the fact that it is what? A concave mirror, this image is going to also be a virtual image. It is not a real image. So we have a virtual, erect, and magnified image. So the correct answer to this question is option D. So that takes us to the next question, which is question number 5. It says, given the same amount of heat, a quantity of water will reach a higher temperature in a brass pot than in a clay pot of the same mass because, so we know that from our specific capacity and latent heat that there's a relationship between the quantity of heat. So we know that quantity of heat is equal to MC change in temperature. So, and with this, it means that my change in temperature is equal to quantity of heat over the mass times the specific capacity, which means that if they have the same amount of quantity of heat and they have the same mass, it means that the only determining factor there, where one will have a higher temperature than the other, is the specific heat capacity. So if, for example, this particular substance has a lower specific capacity, it means that we'll be having what? A higher temperature, because if I'm dividing with a lower specific capacity, it means that my value at the end of the day will be higher. But if I'm dividing with a higher specific capacity, it means that the value of the temperature will be lower, which means that since my brass is able to, water that is in the brass is able to reach a higher temperature, it means that my brass has what? A lower specific heat capacity compared to clay pot. So, which means that the correct answer here, so let's look at the options. Option A says brass is less dense than clay. Wrong. Clay expands more slowly than brass. That is also wrong. Clay loses heat faster than brass. That is also wrong. Option D says the specific capacity of brass is higher than that of clay. That is also wrong. The specific capacity of brass is lower than that of clay. So if the specific capacity of brass is lower than that of clay, then it means that the water in the brass pot, we have a higher temperature than the water in the clay pot. So the correct answer to this question is option E. So that takes us to question number 6. We say, when an astronomical telescope is in normal adjustment, the focal length of the objective lens is 50 centimeters. So we have the focal length of the objective lens to be 50 centimeters. And that of the eyepiece, the focal length of the eyepiece is 5 centimeters. What is the distance between the lenses? The distance between the lenses is the focal length of the lens plus the focal length of the eye. So this will give me 50 centimeters plus 5 centimeters, and that will give me 55 centimeters. So it means that the distance between the lenses is going to be what? 55 centimeters, which is option D. So that takes us to question number 7. It says, the main function of the commutator in a simple DC motor is to dash. Option A says it enables the armature to rotate freely. Option B says it increases the flux linking the armature windings. Option C says maintains a direct current in the armature. Option D says provide a uniform magnetic field around the armature. Option E says it reverses the direction of the current in the armature. So your commutator in a DC motor, it reverses the direction of the current in the armature. So the commutator is just to reverse the direction of current. So that takes us to the next question. So the correct answer is option E. So that takes us to the next question, which is question number 8. It says, an object 3 meters high. So object height is 3 meters. Is placed at a distance of 7.50 meters. Object distance 7.50 meters from a pinhole camera. If the image height is 6.0 centimeters, what is the distance of the film from the pinhole camera? The distance of the film, that's image distance, is unknown. So looking at our option, you see that everything is in centimeters. So I simply convert this to centimeters. So this will give me 300 centimeters. This will give me 750 centimeters. So I know that my object height, image height over object height is equals to image distance over object distance. So this would mean that this will give me 6 over 300 is equals to image distance over 750. So that will give me 300 image distance is equals to 6 times 750. Divide both sides by 300, divided by 300. This means that my image distance will be equal to 15 centimeters. It means that the image distance in this particular pinhole camera is going to be 15 centimeters. That's option C. So that takes us to question number 9, which says, the falling of light energy on a metal such that electrons are liberated from the metal is called dash. Now this phenomenon where light falls on a metal and electrons are liberated from the metal is called the photoelectric effect, where photons are able to liberate electrons from a metal by hitting it with higher energy. So when the photon energy is higher than the work function of the metal, then electrons are liberated, and that phenomenon is called the photoelectric effect. So the correct answer is option D. So that takes us to question number 10, which says a transformer is connected to a 250 volt AC supply. So we have a 250 volt AC supply. So the voltage of the primary coil there is 250 volts. Then said the primary coil has 300 turns. So the number of turns of the primary coil is 300. And the secondary voltage is found to be 10 volts. So the voltage of the secondary coil is 10 volts. What is the number of turns in the secondary coil? So the number of turns in the secondary we do not know, but we know that the number of turns in the secondary over the number of turns in the primary is equals to the voltage of the secondary over the voltage of the primary. So this is the same thing as saying I have the numbers of turns in the secondary over 300 is equals to 10 over 250. So this will cancel this. I will be having, so if I cross multiply here, I'll be having 25 times number of turns in the secondary is equals to 300. So I'll divide by 25, divide by 25. This means that the number of turns in the secondary will be equal to 12 turns. So the number of turns in the secondary coil is going to be what? 12, and that is what? Option B. So that takes us to the next question, which is question number 11, which says, which statement is true of a block of stone of mass m with 0 momentum? So which statement is true of a block of stone of mass m? So the mass of the block is m, and they said the momentum is 0. So if m is the mass, and they are saying that the momentum is equal to 0, and we know that the momentum is equal to the mass times the velocity. So the only way where the mass, if a stone has a known mass, the mass of the stone cannot be 0, because so long as it is matter, the matter must have what? A known mass. So the mass is known. So my m cannot be equal to 0. And if m is not equal to 0, but my momentum is equal to 0, it means one of the what? Factors, or one of the quantities that make up my momentum must be equal to 0. So automatically this means that my velocity is equal to 0. Since my mass cannot be equal to 0, it means that my velocity is equal to 0. So let's look at our option. So option A says the acceleration of the stone is not uniform. Option B says the stone is stationary. Option C says the stone moves at a constant velocity. Option D says the stone moves with maximum velocity. Option E says the stone moves with minimum velocity. Now, if my velocity is 0, it means that the stone is not moving at all. It means that the stone is what? Stationary. So the correct answer to this question is option B, saying that the stone is stationary. So that takes us to question number 12, which says an electron of charge. So we have the charge of the electron given in the question. We have the charge of the electron to be 1.6 times 10 raised to power minus 19 coulomb. Is situated in a uniform electric field of intensity. So we're given the intensity of the field as 2.4 times 10 raised to power 5 volts per meter. What is the force on the electron? So the force is unknown. And we know that the force in an electric field is equal to the charge times the electric field intensity. So this means that my force is equal to 1.6 times 10 raised to power minus 19 times 2.4 times 10 raised to power 5. So this is the same as in I have 1.6 times 2.4 times 10 raised to power minus 19 plus 5. So that will give me 1.6 times 2.4. So that will give me 3.84 times 10 raised to power minus 14 Newton. So the correct answer here is 3.84 times 10 raised to power minus 14 Newton, which is option B. So the correct answer here is option B. So that takes us to question number 13, which says, which is not one of the laws of friction? Which of these is not one of the laws of friction? Option A says the frictional force between two surfaces opposes their relative motion. Option B says the ratio of the frictional force to the normal reaction varies for two given surfaces. Option C says the limited frictional force is independent of the area of surface in contact. Option D says the dynamic frictional force is independent of the relative velocity of the surfaces in contact. And option E says the limiting frictional force is independent of the area of surface in contact, which is the same as option C here. So now when there is frictional force, first, the frictional force to the normal reaction does not vary. Instead, it is constant. So the law that is not applicable to solid friction here is option B. Option B here is not one of the laws of friction, one of the laws of solid friction. So the incorrect answer here is option B. So our answer therefore makes it what? Option B. So that takes us to question number 14. What parts of a camera function in a similar way to the retina of the eye? What part of the camera function in a similar way to the retina of the eye? Now, the part of your camera that does the same function as the retina of the eye is the film. The film of your camera is what does the same function as the retina of the eye. If you have watched this video and you have enjoyed it to this moment, why have you not subscribed? Please subscribe and check our videos in our channel for more videos just like this. Moving on to question number 15. It says, an astronaut walking on the moon where the magnitude of the acceleration due to gravity g is 1/6 that on the Earth, compared with their magnitude on Earth. His mass and weight on the moon are dash. Option A says they are both less. Option B says the mass is less and the weight is the same, respectively. Option C says the mass is the same and the weight is less. And option D says the mass is the same as on Earth and the weight is also the same as on Earth. And option E says they are both greater than the mass and weight on Earth. So let's look at that. Now we know that weight is equals to mass times acceleration due to gravity. So if the weight on Earth is this, it means that the weight on the moon, this is Earth, the weight on the moon is going to be the mass times g/6. So which means that the weight on Earth is higher than the weight on the moon because the acceleration to gravity here is 1/6 that on the Earth. So the weight on the moon is less compared to the weight on the Earth. But the mass does not change. Irrespective of location, the mass of a body remains the same. So the mass is the same, but the weight is less. So we're looking for one of the option that talks about what? The mass being the same and the weight being less. So let's look at our option. So it means that if you look at our option here, option C says that the mass is the same, but the weight is less, which means that option C is our correct answer. So that takes us to question number 16. Which says, which statement is not correct about molecules? Option A says the number of molecules in a unit volume of a solid is greater than in a unit volume of a liquid. Option B says molecules are made up of atoms. Option C says the force of attraction between two molecules of a solid is greater than that between two molecules of a liquid or gas. Option C says the molecules of gases are in regular motion. And option E says molecules of solid vibrate about their mean position. Now, all of these are correct except option D, which says that molecules of gases are in regular motion. Molecules of gases are in random or irregular motion. They do not move in a regular pattern. They move haphazardly. We call it what? Random motion. And that is molecules of gases. So the correct answer to this question is option D. So that takes us to question number 17, which says the inside of a vacuum flask is usually coated with silver to reduce heat loss by dash. Now we have three ways in which heat can be lost. We have what is called the conduction, we have convection, and then we have radiation. Now when you coat the inside of a flask, of a vacuum flask with silver, what you are simply doing is preventing heat loss by radiation. So the correct answer to this question is option E, which what says that what silver is helping to prevent heat loss by radiation, which is option E. I believe if you have watched this video down to this moment, by now you should have subscribed and go to our channel for more videos just like this. So that is up to question number 18, which says, what is the angular velocity of an object in a horizontal circular path of radius 1.5 meters? So my radius here is 1.5 meters with a constant speed. So the velocity was given as 12 meters per second. So we are asked to find the word angular velocity. We do not know. We know that our angular velocity omega is equals to v over r. So this is the same as saying that my angular velocity is 12 divided by 1.5. So that will give me that my angular velocity is 8 rad per second. So the correct answer to this question here is option B, 8 rad per second. So that takes us to question number 19, which says, a wave is represented by the equation y equal to, so we have our wave equation to be y equal to 0.5 sine. This is supposed to be 0.4 pi x minus 60t. There's a typographical error here. It's supposed to be 0.4 pi x. So where the distance x is measured in centimeters and time t in seconds, what is the wavelength of the wave? So if this is the wave equation, they're asking us, how do we get the wavelength of the wave? Now we know that this is in comparison to this wave equation that says y is equals to a sine, this is kx minus 60t. So this means that my k is equals to 0.4 pi. And if k is equal to 0.4 pi, and we know that ordinarily k is supposed to give us 2 pi x, 2 pi over lambda. So if my k is supposed to give me 2 pi over lambda, and my k here is 0.4, this means that I have 0.4 pi is equal to 2 pi over lambda. If I cross multiply, this means that I'll be having lambda to be equals to 2 pi over 0.4 pi. So pi will cancel out pi. It means that my lambda will be equals to 2 divided by 0.4. So that will give me 5 centimeters, because in the question they said that the distance is measured in centimeters. So a distance is measured in centimeters, which means that my lambda is 5 centimeters. So let's look at our options. Looking at the options here, option A says we have 0.4 centimeters. Option B says we have 0.8 centimeters. Option C says we have 1.6 centimeters. And option D says we have 3 centimeters. And option E says we have 10 centimeters. I believe that these particular options are typographical errors. So the correct answer is 5 centimeters. That is also question number 20, which says, the magnetic effect of a current carrying coil is not utilized in the making of a dash. Option A says the carbon microphone, it uses the magnetic effect. Option B says the electric bells, it also uses the magnetic effect. Option C says the magnetic relay, from the name you can tell it that it uses what? The magnetic effect. Then option D says the telephone earpiece, it also uses the magnetic effect. So the only one that does not use the magnetic effect is the thermostat, and the thermostat uses the bimetallic strip. It uses what? It's made up of bimetals, so it uses bimetallic strip. So it uses what? The bimetals for detecting changes in temperature. So we use the bimetallic strip thermometer here. So the correct answer to this question is option E. So that takes us to question number 21. We say, in an operating X-ray tube, a high PD, a high potential difference, is applied between the cathode and the anode for the purpose of what? Why do we increase the potential difference? Why do they apply a high potential difference across the cathode and anode? So the options, option A says it is done in accelerating the electrons to a very high energy. Option B says is in concentrating electrons on the target. Option C says is heating up the anode. Option D says it is heating the cathode. And option E says it is producing a stream of electrons. Now the reason why they increase the potential difference to high altitude is so that what you can be accelerating the electrons to a very high energy. So when you accelerate the electrons to a very high energy, then you can use it in operating your X-ray tube. So the correct answer is option A. So that takes us to question number 22, which says the ability of the eye to focus on objects at various distances is known as dash. Now, all of these, your presbyopia, your myopia, your astigmatism, are eye defects. Your eye strain is just stress on the eye. So the correct answer to this question is accommodation. Accommodation is the ability of the eye to adjust, to focus on objects, or adjust to different lighting or different distances of sight. So the correct answer here is accommodation, the ability of the eye to focus on objects at various distances. So that takes us to question number 23, which says, which color is deviated least when white light passes through a triangular prism? So when white light passes through a triangular prism, you discover that what your colors will be in this format, Roygbe. And this format is what arranged in order of deviation. So this is in increasing deviation. Increasing deviation. And also here we have in decreasing wavelength. So the first color here is red. Then we have orange, we have yellow, we have green, we have blue, we have indigo, and we have violet, which means that the most deviated color is the violet, and the least deviated is red. And the one with the highest wavelength is also red because it is what? Decreasing wavelength. And the one with least wavelength is the violet. So in this question, they say, which of them is least deviated? So the one that is least deviated is the red color, which is what? Option A. So that takes us to, which is option C here. So that takes us to question number 24, which says, an electric heater takes 4 ampere. So the current in this electric heater is 4 ampere. When operated on a 250 volt supply, the voltage is 250 volts. What is the cost of the electricity consumed at 10 kobo per kilowatt hour when the heater is used for 5 hours? So the power here is IV, which means that the power is 4 times 250, which will give me 1000 watts. So if I convert to kilowatt, that will give me 1 kilowatt. So for to kilowatt hour, the kilowatt hour here will be 1 kilowatt hour times the number of hours used, which is what? 5. And that will give me 5 kilowatt hour. So the cost, therefore, would be the cost per kilowatt hour, which is 10 kobo, times 5. And that will give me 50 kobo. So it means that if this particular electric heater is used for 5 hours, this person is going to pay 50 kobo, which is what? Option B. So that takes us to question number 25. It says, an object 8 centimeters in front of a plane mirror moves at a speed of 6 centimeters per second. So the distance of the object to the plane mirror is 8 centimeters. And the speed or the velocity is 6 centimeters per second from the mirror. What will be the distance separating the object and the image after 2 seconds? So after the first 2 seconds, so if it moves at 6 centimeters per second, and then it has moved what for 2 seconds? For 2 seconds, it would have moved 12. That's 6, which is this, times the time, which is 2, and that will give you what? 12 centimeters. So the distance here, we know that what? Velocity is equal to what? Distance over time, which means that my distance is equal to what? Velocity times time. So if the velocity is 6 centimeters per second, it means therefore that the distance will be what? Velocity times the time. And since we know that the time was given as 2 seconds, it means therefore that the distance that it has moved in that 2 seconds is 6, which is velocity, times 2, which is what? The time, and that will give you what? 12 centimeters. So if it has moved 12 centimeters, they're now asking us what will be the distance separating the object and the image. So this here is the new distance it has covered, but then remember that in the question they said an object moves what? 8 centimeters in front of a mirror at this speed. So it means that the third distance here that it has covered is 8 plus 12, and that will give me what? 20 centimeters. So this is the what? New object distance. So this is my what? Object distance. My object distance here is now what? 20 centimeters. But the question is, what is the distance separating the object and the image? So if it moves what? If it has a distance, if the object has a distance of 20 centimeters, it means that inside the mirror also, there will be a distance that is equivalent to the what? Object distance. So the image distance there is also what? The same thing as the object distance. So which means I'll be having 20 centimeters also, which means that the distance between the object and the mirror is going to be u plus v, and that will give me what? 20 plus 20, and that will give me 40 centimeters. So the object, from the object down to the image, what I'll be having is what? 40 centimeters, which is what? Option E. So we've come to the end of today's class. Don't forget to go to our channel for more videos just like this.
Hi, I'm sure you enjoyed the content you just watched. To see more episodes as that, preparing you for your oncoming exams, smash the subscribe button on this channel right now and visit the playlist that we've made for you, covering over 50 types of different exams, including JAMB, WAEC, Cacao,